And off we go. Hey, Bryce, welcome back.
Hey.
How are you doing today?
Hey, I'll tell you what, it's been a heck of a week, and the weekend is staring me dead in the face. So I'm ready for it. I don't know about you.
Yeah, same. I've got a lot of fun plans this weekend, so I'm excited to get going. But as always, love being here on Twitch with all of you guys, sharing some cost optimization knowledge. And we have a super interesting topic, which I'll get to in a sec. So welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your cost optimization at AWS. My name is Stephanie Gooch, and I am a commercial architect at AWS. So what that means is I look after all things cost for telco, specifically in Europe. And Bryce, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yep, so I'm the other half of that coin. Everything that Steph mentioned about focusing on telco, I do that here in North America. But we are one of a few folks that actually do that across all of our strategic accounts here within AWS. So what we hope to bring here is just our experiences. And certainly in the chats, we welcome any insight, any input that you have as your own experiences have taught you about cost management as we work through some of these tools today.
Exactly. So please share comments, questions, ideas in the chat. We want to hear from you. We love getting that kind of interaction and feedback. And today we are going to be talking about something really interesting. So the idea of today's topic is, as customers, and I've definitely experienced this, and Bryce probably has as well when he was a customer, there are so many services on AWS, period. But there's also so many services which can help you optimize. And sometimes it can be a bit much, like where do I start? What do I use for what situation? And so today we're going to talk about three of the kind of big three ones that we recommend looking into that we use every day when we talk to our customers. So, and we're actually going to do a bit of screen sharing, and Bryce is going to show you some ways in which to interpret this information. So do you want to give an overview of the three that we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously throughout this entire experience that we go through today, if questions pop up, put them in the chat. We'd love to hear it. And Steph, absolutely, please interrupt me at any time as we're sharing the screen here. So unfortunately, I can't see anybody, so flying a little bit blind on the questions, but we'd love to hear as those questions arise. As Steph mentioned, there's three really primary tools that we leverage with our customers to try to help them get the ball rolling and managing their entire portfolio as it relates to cost optimization. So in terms of where we're at in sort of the spending profile, typically these tools kick in after you've already deployed tools or deployed resources, and you're looking for ways to get visibility into that portfolio, identify areas that need to be optimized, and then have a tool that enables you to take that action with some contextual information. So the three tools are going to be EC2 Rightsizing recommendations. That's going to be available in Cost Explorer. Then we'll take a look at Compute Optimizer and not only what it can handle from an EC2 perspective, but some adjoining services. And then lastly, we'll take a look at Trusted Advisor. Now, all of these tools, there's no cost to use them, but there are some prerequisites, and we'll cover what those are in order to leverage these tools.
Awesome. Should we kick off with the first one, get the Rightsizing looking at?
Let's do it.
All right, let's share your screen. Share your screen.
All right. So we should be coming to you live from Bryce's desktop.
So excited.
Yes, as anticlimactic as that is. So what we are looking at are EC2 Rightsizing recommendations within my own account. And so this is the real deal. There's nothing fake about this. These are EC2 instances that I run in my own environment to house different workloads. And how I navigated here, we're zoomed in just a bit here. But first I went to AWS Cost Management or Cost Explorer. And then in this menu on the left, you'll see the Rightsizing recommendations link. So you just hit that. And when you get here, you'll see the different options that you have for selecting different configurations in the search for optimization opportunities. And you can see here, unfortunately, I have not been following.
Oh,
now, the good news is I'm not breaking the bank at $8 a month in savings. So that is an opportunity. Now, what we can see here in the recommendation is not only that instance ID that allows me to click this link and go directly to the EC2 instances, I can see what's going on here, right? So I can see that I'm running an M5 series at this point. And if I keep scrolling over, which unfortunately, because of the view, I can't see, it's also going to say, hey, here's where you can optimize to. Okay, so this is the instance it's recommending for me to go to.
Why is it recommending that? There was something at the end of that line that might suggest it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this case, what it's noticing is that my CPU utilization is very, very low. In this case, 3.8%. So essentially, there's nothing going on here, for lack of a better explanation. Now, for our customers, right, you may be going, okay, well, that's cute. You've got one instance. I've got thousands. What in the world do I do at that point, right? So one of the things you can do is just start filtering. So you can filter by region, account, if there's a particular internal customer that you're looking for. But if maybe there's a different tag, so I could say for a name, I could filter there and so forth. So it's a really, this tool is powerful because of its simplicity. It's only going to focus on EC2, and it's only going to focus on those that are going to save you money. And we'll see what that nuanced discussion is when we get to Compute Optimizer.
Okay, and so these recommendations, they stay there every 14 days, they refresh, is that right?
So it's going to refresh every day, but it's going to look back over the last 14 days.
That's it. So, which is good. It means everything's up to date. But one thing, so I'm going to share a resource in the chat. So one thing we noticed that is if you're a bit untrusting, like I used to be of AWS when it comes to recommendations, it seems very strange that we're telling you to save money. What? So what I did was we created, along with Andy and one of our teams, he actually created this right-sizing recommendation collector. So this goes off every 2 weeks or every month or whenever, every day, and gets these recommendations out of Cost Explorer for you, puts it into Athena so you can run queries over it. And more importantly, so you can save that data. So if you're like, is this an anomaly? Is this just one random day or like 2 random weeks where someone was on holiday and therefore the recommendation to go down in size has occurred? Or is this happening a lot? Is this a constant instance ID that lets us know what's going on? And also over time, maybe like you said, we have 200 accounts and you have tons of instances on the list. How can you track that progress you've made? How can you show that you've done some amazing cost optimization? Well, if you store this in Athena using S3, you can show that over time, you've kind of reduced that waste. So I'd recommend checking that out in Git. Okay, so right sizing, first one done.
There you go. And please also understand too, I could spend probably an hour alone just on this tool, but at least so you don't have to hear me drone on for that long. We're going to go ahead and expedite this over to Compute Optimizer.
Okay, number 2.
All right, so again, we're zoomed in here just a bit, but how I navigate it here is you can just simply go into the search bar, type in Compute Optimizer, and you'll see that tool pop up as an option. Well, if I can spell right.
Don't worry, I can never spell.
Yeah, that's always the challenge with the Texan. Okay, and you could see I could just click here on this, and it would take me over to this particular service. Now, when you land there, you'll land on the dashboard. All I did to get here was click on the link that says, hey, what are your recommendations for over-provisioned resources?
Right.
Okay. So that's how I got here. Now, there are some defaults when you go in here. So if you click on that and you see the default settings and you don't see anything, go ahead and check these filters. It may be that you're filtered to a region or filtered to maybe a different tag that you're not familiar with, and that's why you may not be seeing the instances that you expect. And
also, if you're doing this from your organization, yeah, you can look across all your accounts. So as you see there, Bryce's Playground, great name for an account. That's a list of all the accounts you can look at. So that's also a really good point to add. So if you're looking at it from a FinOps team point of view and you have access to that kind of organization view, you can use this to look at all those accounts and see the trends across the board rather than just having to look at one at a time. So yeah, check that you're on the right account as well as region.
All right, so now that we're here, basically, what can we do with it? Now, in EC2 recommendations, there's a link. I could hit that link and it would take me directly to the resource, but we don't see that here. We have a little difference. So if I click the radio button and then view details, that's going to do something special. What this is going to do is in real time provide you a list of options and then do something even cooler. It's going to show you the actual metrics related to your instance that you're looking at. So in this case, I can see not only the metrics in blue, but I can also see what would be the effect if I accepted the recommendation.
That's very helpful, because again, me being that very untrustworthy person of AWS, I don't want to see Amazon just saying, change the instance type. I need to know why. And before, like you said, we had that CPU number, that was great. But do you know what? My doorbell's just gone and it's an Amazon delivery and I'm just going to have to ignore it. I don't want to get up. I knew it would happen. We've only got 2 episodes left of this season. And I knew it would happen. Just leave it outside. Sorry. So going back to it. So being able to see this data, it really makes this tool specifically really useful for, he's ringing the doorbell again. Really useful for, I shouldn't have told you guys what's happening. Really good for developers, because they want to see why these metrics are coming in. And it's very similar to CloudWatch. So really key for that. And I'm just going to throw this up. We had a question from Alex. Can you access the outputs via the CLI, or is it just the interface? Now, I'm going to pop in the link because I already found it. Yes, you can access these through the CLI. Thank you for asking, just to save you having to answer that question, Bryce. But go on, continue, sorry.
No, genuinely appreciate it. And for those that may not know, whenever we hear a doorbell ring, that's just our obligatory commercial for Amazon. Just kidding. So for something else I want to mention too, if we go back to the top, this resource ID, if you're a keen observer, you'll notice that's the exact same instance from what we were just looking at in EC2 recommendations. There's 2 reasons for that. The first reason is the same engine that generates the recommendations for Compute Optimizer is what is displaying the results inside of EC2 Rightsizing recommendations and Cost Explorer. It's the same engine. So it's always going to be the same instance types. The second point is going to be, though, the difference in recommendations. Right. Over in EC2 recommendations, it was telling us to go from an M5 4x to a M5 2x. Clearly, that's not what's going on here. And it has to do with how these 2 different tools approach making a recommendation. EC2 Rightsizing recommendations is going to say, I want to save you money. The lens that I'm going to look through to provide recommendations is based purely on cost. So it's going to try to maximize your cost efficiency. And that's why we see an M5 2x coming. The challenge that we have is, if you, like me, don't have memory agent installed or the CloudWatch agents installed on your EC2 instance, there's no memory telemetry coming back. And so Compute Optimizer says, well, okay, time out here. We don't know if that recommendation is actually going to break something because we don't have visibility into the memory side of things. So what we're going to do is make recommendations that maintain the memory allocation. Okay, so that's how we get into an R series, which is a memory optimized family for making that recommendation.
Right. And I've just thrown up the link there to make sure that you do install that CloudWatch agents to produce memory. And Alex, again, just asked a really good question. Does tracking memory add costs? Now, I believe that it adds a small amount of CloudWatch costs, but because it sends quite a lot of data all at once, it's not a massive influx of spend. But yeah, just something to be aware of. Good point. CloudWatch does cost money, so but only a little bit. So maybe if you're starting out in this using Compute Optimizer, if not by default, you haven't got this thing installed, you can kind of use these recommendations lightly. But if you really want to get serious, or if there's a specific account you want to review, add that CloudWatch agent in.
Absolutely. And if at any point you're seeing recommendations and you're not really recognizing that particular instance type. So for instance, I've seen an R5B and an R5, I'm like, what is that? Go to this link here and we'll throw it into the chat. This is where all of the different instance types are going to be outlined. So you can say, okay, I'm here at an M5, but maybe if I want to go to a memory optimized instance, that's where we see the different R families. Right.
Brilliant. And just for those who are joining us kind of midway, maybe, today we are chatting about the different solutions and services that AWS offers for free to give you advice on optimizing your spend, mainly focusing on the EC2 side. So we just covered previously Rightsizing, and now we're looking at Compute Optimizer. Sorry, go on, Bryce.
No, and it's actually a perfect segue, because one of the things you just mentioned was, hey, these tools are free. And they are. You don't explicitly incur a cost for EC2 Rightsizing recommendations or Compute Optimizer or Trusted Advisor. But there's a very big caveat when we switch to our third tool, which is Trusted Advisor.
Oh, before we jump onto it, there was one thing that we covered. So me and Bryce obviously did chat about this beforehand. And when we did, we were trying to set up it in Bryce's account. And the one thing we noticed is that you can export the data. So do you want to go back to the bit where you show you can export the information? Get rid of your meeting.
All right, so how you do that is if you're inside looking at the recommendation or the details page, you can't do that. You have to go back to the recommendations. And for here, it's going to load. And then we hit that export button. And then it's going to say, OK, what do you want to export to? Now, in my case, I've deleted all the regions because I only want to export to one bucket. But you could export to specific buckets if you have customers or certain permissioning set up in certain regions. You can do that as well. Now, in my case, it says, hey, just put in your bucket name, right? So it's like, OK, well, I'll just put in my bucket name of Compute Optimizer, Compute Optimizer exports. And when I did that, I got an error. And I was banging my head against the wall thinking, what in the, I don't understand. Well, it has to do with how you set up your permissionings. You need to go in and for your particular bucket, you need to add a permission type so that it will allow the Compute Optimizer to dump exports into that bucket. So you can see here under permissions, I went and added a policy to do that. And I think we have a link for this policy so that you could do that as well.
Yeah, so really important, just if you're getting that error, flag that now, make sure you got the policy, because it makes sense why you're allowing a service to access a bucket if you haven't explicitly said, yes, of course you can be Optimizer, please put the data there. And then this will be a thing that does incur costs, right? So storage, we all know, costs money. So obviously not very much money. These files are, especially in Bryce's case, are very small and probably, especially if you're on free tier, won't come up if you're just doing this. But it is something to keep an eye on. And when you do that retention policy, if you're keeping these constantly these data all along, you might want to set up maybe some infrequent access if you're kind of going back, or I have a policy, a lifecycle policy attached to that bucket. So yeah, okay, we can progress now. I've had my bit on my box about the policy bit to make sure that you do.
Yeah, it's a very key bit. And if I were to click this link and get the export, the last point I'll make here is that this is what the export would look like. It's basically just an export of what you were looking at there in the detail page. So you can see the different recommendations it was giving. And if you're ever interested, it would also tell you other facets that would come along with going with an R series. So for in this case, you can see that the different characteristics beyond just compute and memory that it's going to provision for you. And to link this back to the early tool too, when we made the comment about it's the same engine that creates the recommendations for EC2 Rightsizing recommendations and Compute Optimizer. This is the export from EC2 Rightsizing recommendations. It's the exact same.
Right.
With the only caveat that this would tell you an M5 2X, but otherwise it's all the same categories of information. Okay.
Brilliant. Okay. So last one, number 3.
All right. So with Trusted Advisor, you get the opportunity to have the policies check for cost optimization opportunities if you have business support or enterprise support enabled on your accounts. Okay, so that's the caveat. That does cost money, but once you're in there, this tool won't cost money. And so that's the caveat that we add here about a prerequisite that you would need in order to do that for Trusted Advisor.
Okay.
So once we're here, we can see there's a very big wealth of information. And so if we're looking at sort of a customer's journey as it relates to cost optimization, typically we recommend start with the EC2 recommendations coming out of Cost Explorer for the EC2 Rightsizing recommendations. It's simple, it's easy, it takes into account your RI and savings plans and how that would affect making those adjustments. And once you get some run rate, once you get some experience there and having success, go ahead and have your cloud practitioners, the different people that own the resources, have them switch into Compute Optimizer, because that's when the cloud practitioners who are actually managing those resources will get to see in real time those CloudWatch metrics that we exposed earlier. Now we're at this sort of large overarching tool. And you can see here, there's many other areas and facets we could go into with Trusted Advisor. But there's some really great opportunities here. So if we go down to the check for low utilization of EC2 instances, there's obviously a lot more descriptive information. And if we scroll down, we're going to see a lot more that's going on here with Trusted Advisor. And that's because this is a different recommendation engine.
Right.
One of the things that Steph mentioned very early on in the call or on this presentation here is that when it comes to tracking, right, for like EC2 recommendations or CloudWatch, it's going to take in a 14-day stretch of data to analyze, to tell you over that 2 weeks what usage pattern really fits for the different EC2 instance types that are out there.
Okay.
In Trusted Advisor, it doesn't require you to have a full 14 days. So that's why we see a lot more instance types, because what's going on is these instances here with the test instance, those are actually part of an instance scheduler fleet that I've stood up. So these instances are being turned off every night. So while the usage pattern may indicate that they need to be right-sized, which they are because they're showing up here, they're not going to show up in Compute Optimizer or EC2 Rightsizing recommendations because there's not a consistent 14-day period of activity.
Interesting.
The other thing that we'll notice here is these instances, they're not being turned off every night. So why do we see them here, but not in the other tools? And that's because these are part of an auto-scaling group. Now, Compute Optimizer does support auto-scaling groups, but your required quota and the different facets you have for minimum instances that need to be provisioned, those all have to align. So the max, the minimum, and the normal run rate of your auto-scaling groups, in my case, it's not all the same. I have a minimum of 1, maximum of 3, and I tell it to go ahead and manage that fleet. So because those 3 don't match, they're not going to show up in here, but they will show up in Trusted Advisor. Now, one big key difference is it's not going to tell you what instance you need to go to. So that's one of the different things about Trusted Advisor.
It just tells you that it's underutilized.
Yep. Now, a very big, really cool feature for Trusted Advisor is this organizational view. So you can take all of the checks, not just the EC2 Rightsizing recommendations, but let's say that you're monitoring performance and you want to identify EC2 instances that you haven't provisioned enough capacity for. You can go ahead and in your organizational view, you can set up a report to say, I want to look at just optimization and just performance, set up that report, create it, and then you can download it. So you're getting a much wider swath of opportunities to go and tackle. And a use case for that is when you're working with a team and you only have one opportunity to work with that team. So you want to give them everything up front for them to go tackle, maybe for that month or that quarter, so that you don't have to iteratively come back to them.
Right, okay. But again, if you do want to get that aggregation of data, classic, there is another way of getting it. That's from I think this is my version of it, but there is also an Amazon version that you can go off the fork to get that collector so that you can, again, get it into Athena and collect it. And I also put one in the comments for Compute Optimizer. So everything you can export, we've seen you can get all that data regularly from the console. But if you are a bit more like me and you want to hold on to it and be able to mess around with it, connect it to other bits of information, like your CUR, like your organization naming data, things like that in the different accounts, then you can do that as well. Oh, and before I forget as well, there's in the Kudos workshop, there is a way of there's a way of viewing your Trusted Advisor data in a much more quick sight, nicer view. So I'd recommend checking that out, going onto the Kudos framework and having a look. And there's also, we did an episode with Aaron about the Kudos framework, so you can check that out on our YouTube channel, which I will post a link to.
So something else that I will mention is in prep for this chat, I was going in here and I was playing around. So, okay, every day I should expect to see 11 instances. And I went in here and I ran it one night and only 4 instances showed up. And I was like, oh my goodness, looking up on a keyboard, like, where did they go? What happened is I mentioned earlier that these instances are part of a scheduled job that or tagged for instance schedule to turn them off every night.
Right.
If you go in and you hit refresh, this will go out and look at all of the data it has in the background that it's monitoring for your EC2 instances. If the EC2 instances are turned off, they will not appear in this recommendation list.
Okay.
So waited till in the morning, obviously, ran it again, and obviously now they're showing up. So just a caveat there, if you're seeing why instances are falling on or off the list, that could be why.
And that's a really great point, especially for people that work in maybe different time zones, if they're running reports. So don't run a report when you know that most of your instances are going to be maybe off, or if you're, like I was saying, if you're working late at night, don't run this when everybody's offline, they've turned it off. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left. So do you want to summarize? We have a couple of notes on it, but what would, just throw it in there, throwing you the deep end, Bryce. Which is your favorite of the three? Which one do you like to shout out the most?
It's like a parent asking who's their favorite child, which everybody knows you have a favorite child. I'd say my favorite is Compute Optimizer. And that's because something that we didn't get to go into much is it's very hard to view right sizing in terms of when you're looking at EC2 instances of putting blinders on and saying, I'm only going to focus on EC2 instances. What I really want to do is take a look at the whole pattern or relationship between that resource and anything else that's attached to it. And that's where we have the opportunity to talk about EBS volumes. So you can see here, obviously I have volumes that are attached, but let's say I didn't, or let's say I did have EBS volumes attached and they're way underperforming. Okay, that's where I would go in here. And if I were to look at these EBS volumes, it's also going to show me what it's attached to, which is something that is also pretty cool. So if I select that and view details and scroll down just a bit, again, I'm getting that telemetry data to show me if this actually needs to be optimized or not. And I can alter that. So let's say I know that my workloads are spiky and I just need to look at the last week because there was something special that happened.
Right.
We had a big demand come in. That's where you can set these options and take a look at that. Now, in this case, I'm already on GP3.
Flexibility.
Yep, there you go. So that's why I really like Compute Optimizer.
Fair enough. I always do Compute Optimizer. I like it especially for that EC2 option where it gives you the, this is where you are now, this is where it will change to option.
Yep.
So I'm going to take us off screen share. So it's just us again. So the other thing, so in terms of how you approach this, we wanted to summarize a little bit on that as well in the last kind of 2 to 3 minutes. So the way I would approach this, if you're like, oh, this seems like such a cool tool, I want to go and I recommend like turning it on for all your accounts. That's great. But now you have tons and tons of data. Like, what do you do first? Where do you start? And I always say start small, start with an account that you know there's a demand to optimize in it, that there are people willing to do that change. Maybe you are in the kind of development stages and they're interested to see about that flexibility of the cloud and take advantage of being able to change that instance type. And you're not constrained by buying an RI of certain size. Go in there, have a play around, see what happens with the data. One big thing we wanted to caveat was don't do it on a live system, please. Don't go in there and say, oh, you know, Steph and Bryce told me that I should look at Compute Optimizer in the middle of the day when you're on a production site. I'm going to change this instance type just to see what happens. Please do it in your development accounts. Just covering our backs for you guys to try that. But yeah, that's the other thing. And one more thing that I really want to shout out is a way to track this. Rather than just looking over historical data, is thinking about things like measuring your unit cost. So we did a session on unit cost. You can check it out here on YouTube, and there's the blogs attached to the show notes for this one. But tracking your unit cost will allow you to see how these changes make a positive, hopefully, impact on your accounts. So really drive home, especially when you are starting out and you want to tell that story that we chose an account, we attacked some instances, we changed the size. What did that do? Our unit cost went down and therefore we're kind of optimized. So that's why I wanted to finish off saying. But Bryce, any closing remarks in the last minute?
Yes, please don't test live in production.
That's it. That's all. But check out Compute Optimizer, check out Trusted Advisor, check out Rightsizing. They're all really useful services. And let us know. Please feel free, as always, to email us if you have any questions or any topics you want to talk about, you think could be interesting. Next week, we are doing a session on unlocking optimization in real life. So me and Alex are going to be back talking about some real life customer stories that we have engaged with. And that's all. Have a good day, everyone, and we'll see you all next week.